You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey gang, today's guest is lead guitarist and backing vocalist Nick Wheeler from the Stillwater, Oklahoma rock band All American Rejects. Together we dive deep into the writing, recording, and inspiration behind the smash hit single Move Along, taken from their 2005 second album of the same name. Nick was kind enough to share the demo of the song, written by himself and bassist vocalist Tyson Ritter, in the 11th hour after management and their record label told them they needed to keep writing for the album. Overall, the track was mostly there at the demo stage, save for a different melody and lyrics in the verses. The band chose Howard Benson to produce Move Along, and the results are pure pop brilliance. The instrumental layers and vocal treatments are highlighted even further by mixer Chris Lord-Alge, who absolutely knocked it out of the park. The song was a huge step forward for the band, and its subsequent success opened up a huge legion of new fans. So for all this, and a filthy guitar pick scraping the frosting off an Oreo cookie, don't you dare go anywhere.
Hey, hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast. Hey, hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast. Hey, hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast. Hey, hey, have you heard? Krista makes a podcast.
Nick, how's it going?
Hey, buddy. How you doing, man?
I am fantastic. It looks like you have a palm tree motif behind you. Is that what I'm seeing?
I'm in the vibes corner of my studio.
I'd say so.
The tree is fake because I've learned the hard way that you can't keep plants alive in a studio because of like sub-frequencies, as well as this is an airlock in here, so nothing will survive. But yeah, and this is my vintage nun's chair. Apparently it was in like some nun's quarters. I don't know. She's dead now, but it's mine.
Okay. Well, I love the chair and the motif, and
loving your space too, man. Fellow Tennessean.
Yes. We discussed that we're neighbors a moment ago. You're over in Nashville. I'm in the Knoxville area.
Bitchin'.
And I know we share a lot of stories. We were talking before we started rolling about the production team alone on this, which we'll get into. But, you know, you're another one of those bands, the Rejects, that I remember when you came along, and I particularly remember because a band from Gainesville, Hot Water Music, they had a record on Doghouse.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And I found out you guys were doing it, and I'm like, oh, and you guys were the new band about 20 years ago. And for whatever reason, any band after you guys, it was just, they were just a new band. It doesn't matter if they came out in 2017 or when you did. Right. So you're not a new band. I can't believe 20 years has went. But
I know, right?
I remember hearing Swing Swing, and there's such a great pop sensibility with that song. You certainly weren't, a squeaky clean pop band, but you weren't too frayed on the punk side.
Swing, swing, swing from the table sound. My heart is crushed by a former love. Can you help me find a way to carry on again?
And then, of course, this record, Move Along, came out, and it still sounded like you guys, but it was just this pop layer of production, and it just took you guys to another level. What was that like in between the first record and going in to make this one? And how did Howard Benson get involved? Were you guys looking for I'm going to use the term bigger pop sound than with the previous record?
Sure. Speaking of the first record, we, like you said, were signed to Doghouse Records out of Stillwater, Oklahoma. And, I think we were just swinging for the fences with any pop sensibilities we had, just trying to get big choruses, trying to get those songs that would get us on the radio and get us out of that town. So, Doghouse, thankfully they came along because I was a big fan of the Get Up Kids. These were back in the days where you could turn a CD over and find the record label's address on the back of the CD. So I would send unsolicited demos to record labels on the backs of all my favorite CDs, and the Get Up Kids were one of them. And Dirk and Emily flew out to Tulsa and signed us right there at the old Spaghetti Warehouse. But we made that record with Tim O'Hare for like $10,000. We slept on his floor. dirt cheap. We were living in Williamsburg, Brooklyn back in 2002 before it became the Williamsburg we know today.
Before it cleaned up.
I think Mikey from the Dance Hall Crashers had like a Radio Shack kind of like kiosk in the little strip mall where our coffee shop was. Like it was kind of like a 90s hangover, like is kind of what it felt like.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all that to say, made that first record on the cheap, but we had a great experience, and we thought, we were just going to go write a dozen more songs and make another record with Tim O'Hare. We would have been stoked to do that, because that's kind of how we made the first record. We got signed with only 5 or 6 songs to our name. So once we got that record, you're like, oh shit, I guess we better write the rest of the records. So we took the last semester of Tyson's high school, I guess, to write the rest of that, and we literally went to the studio with only 11 songs, the only 11 songs we had to our name. So when it came time to make Move Along, we're like, cool, let's go write 11 or 12 songs and just do this again. We got to that point, we shit out 11 or 12 songs. A couple of them were great and ended up making the record. But, for the most part, we were coming off of this kind of roller coaster of touring the first record. And, like I said, Tyson was in high school when we got signed. So, we were 19 and 20 years old doing all this. So, there was a lot of experiences, a lot of decompression needed to happen after that. And we just need to figure out what the fuck our band was. Because it was still... it was just the two of us writing the songs. We recorded the first record, just the two of us. We weren't sure what kind of record we were going to make. Is this going to be like a Savage Garden thing where there's just two of us? Or is this going to be like a band rock record? So it was, I'd say about six or 8 months in, we thought we were ready. We were ready to pull the trigger with Tim O'Hare. And our manager and our A&R guy stepped in and they were like, why don't you just keep writing? And, those ill-fated words, just keep writing.
Yeah, which means we don't hear a single yet.
Exactly. And
translation.
And actually, when they said that, I don't think any of the singles had been written yet. So thankfully, they stepped in and, said that over and over and over and just drilled that into our heads. And so at that point, we started mixing it up. We were living in Florida. We couldn't go back to our hometown. It was a small place. After being on MTV and then going back to our hometown, it wouldn't have been the same experience. We wouldn't have had that anonymity to just be ourselves and create.
Sure. And can I just jump in real quick?
Yeah, man.
I got to talk about that first record real quick because what you guys did at your age, okay? This is to all the listeners tuning in right now. It's amazing. That record,
thanks,
I listened to bands' first records. I know what our first records sound like, okay? We were trying to get our footing. We were trying to find our sound. You touched on something a moment ago. You said, is it just Tyson and I? We're the ones that write the songs, but is this going to be a band collaborative effort? And those things, when you're talking out loud, are important.
Totally.
That drummer you bring in, that other guitar player you bring in, they're going to add no matter who they are, they're going to bring in or subtract something from the equation there.
Oh, absolutely.
And you guys put this record out as kids. You throw it out there, and Swing Swing gets picked up by radio pretty big. You're on MTV. You're playing the radio shows. This happens on your first record on a label called Doghouse.
Yeah, it was wild.
It's incredible, and congratulations to you guys.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, people always say like overnight success and stuff, and then on the other hand, the band is always like, it wasn't overnight. We played bars for years before that happened, but it's kind of both. I mean, we were, paying our dues for a year or two, and then that happened, and it did feel like overnight once, once it kicked in. But yeah, so this was like mid 2004. And we were, just writing a bunch of songs, living in Florida, which again, we were up in the panhandle of Florida, which, like I said earlier with Williamsburg, we were there a little early. It was called the Redneck Riviera when we lived there.
We refer to that in Florida as Eastern Alabama.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they called it fucking Lower Alabama because of the 3-letter postal code. But yeah, they call it the Redneck Riviera when we lived there, and now they call it Nashville's Beach because that's where everybody goes for vacation from Nashville. Like it's a lot different. It was like a little hippie beach town back then. But it was about that time where, we stopped making these full-blown full-blown produced demos, and we just started writing acoustic tracks. And then we took a bunch of those songs to Atlanta. I think our manager thought we needed to, get out of that hippie beach town, stop being fucking beach bums and go somewhere, not only where there were no distractions, but where we could just work and to where the other guys could fly in and meet us. Because at that point, we had decided, like, okay, let's get in a rehearsal room. Let's be a band. Let's finish writing these songs or finish arranging these songs. And yeah, so we all met up in Atlanta. And again, this keeps happening. We stayed in the Virginia Highlands, which is kind of like, the Williamsburg or the Silver Lake of Atlanta. Only back then, the now boutique hotel was $30 a night back then. And I think one of us got bed bugs. Yeah, it was wild. We rehearsed in this place called Avatar Studios, which was a great facility, but I mean, it was bare bones. It was plywood walls, and it was just what we needed, like all that you needed and nothing more. And now ironically, it's like my favorite coffee shop in Atlanta. They've renovated it quite nicely. But anyway, so yeah, we got in this box and just started arranging these songs. I think the only single we had written at that point was Dirty Little Secret. And we weren't in love with it. We didn't know what it was. It was just an acoustic demo, and it kind of had this swing feel to it. It kind of sounded like a Tom Petty B-side. We didn't really know what to do with it. So we kind of just put that on the back burner, and we worked on all these other like rock songs that we had, a lot of which made the record, but we still didn't have a single. So, I learned yesterday when I talked to Mike, our other guitar player, he said that Jeff Sosno, our A&R guy, would call him and be like, "Hey, are there new songs? Like, have you heard anything?"
yeah. You don't want to bother the writers and piss them off.
I didn't know about that. That was the first I'd heard of that. That was hilarious. But
that's awesome.
But yeah, and it was just we did that. Only in your early 20s when you literally have nothing else going for you, would you agree to just go to a strange city that you've never been to, stay in a basically like a motel and rehearse for 12 hours a day every single day until somebody said, "Okay, cool, let's go make a record." There was no timeline. We had no idea how long we were going to be there.
When your A&R guy got involved and manager and said, "I think you guys should write more songs," was there ever a discussion about bringing in or collaborating with outside writers? And when did Howard get involved to produce, Howard Benson?
Yeah, actually, it only happened one time. We were in Atlanta, and Jeff, our A&R guy, suggested we meet and work with Butch Walker, who I'm actually
awesome.
I'm a huge fan of him.
Yeah,
I already was at the time. I was a Marvelous 3 fan, and I think he'd put out a couple solo records at that time. And we're still buddies today. I love him to death. So it wasn't anything against him. It was just a time in music, and also like a time, I feel like, for bands where any outside collaborators were just kind of frowned upon, and it just felt icky. We're like, no, like, we're a band. We write our own songs. Like, nobody else is allowed in here. Like, this is our little club. So we didn't go that route, and he never pushed it again. I think he thought he had a home run with the Butch Walker thing, which, nowadays that'd be amazing. But yeah, back then we weren't interested, so we just kept our heads down and just kept doing what we were doing.
And good for you. And hey, you came off a pretty decent sized hit for your first record. Okay, so there's something here. If you had nothing on the first record, let's say Move Along came out and didn't move any singles, then maybe you might start saying, yeah, maybe we can collaborate and figure out what's going on. But you guys are kind of cooking here. Dirty Little Secret was your first top 10 track on the Billboard Hot 100. It peaked at number 9. And that song, I think, looking back now, I think it was the perfect leadoff single.
Well, it wasn't gonna be.
Okay. Well, and the reason I say that is it's not too far removed from the same cloth,
right,
as Swing Swing. It
Totally.
was a great setup to me for Move Along, who introduced you, as you know, to a whole new fan base. I mean, when Move Along came out, I was hearing it in elevators in places that you don't hear bands like ours. Typically, unless it gets massive.
Right. That was the song that pop radio picked up, was Dirty Little Secret. I don't think we got really much pop radio play on Swing Swing. I mean, there was still a lot of rock radio, back then. We were playing shows with like Stained and Powerman 5000 and shit.
What was the first single going to be?
It was going to be Move Along.
Oh, it was?
Yeah. So we'll get to that. I don't mean to get ahead of myself.
Yeah,
there,
no, that's awesome.
But so we'd been in Atlanta for about a month. We'd rehearsed a dozen or so songs. Still no single. And so it got to the point where we just started kicking people out. Some of us would go to the the rehearsal room by ourselves, or maybe Tyson and I would just go. I think the rest of us went to lunch one day, and then when we came back, Tyson was kind of messing around on the Korg Triton. That was our pride and joy. That's where I did all the programming for the first record on. So of course it came to Atlanta, but he was just fucking around with this preset that kind of had this like da 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 like that kind of vibe, and he was kind of humming this melody, and I was like, okay, like, hold that thought. I remember going over, to my AC30 and my Memory Man and making a guitar version of that, which I think, guitar nerds talk to me about this one a lot. Like, that's not like a funk, like kind of guitar part. Like, it's based on a delay pedal with the feedback turned all the way down. So like, okay, cool. That's the trademark. Like, that's the thing. That's the riff. And then just naturally, and I was thinking about this yesterday when I was talking to Mike, I was like, it's interesting because then from there, from that keyboard that Tyson was on and the guitar rig that I was on, he picked up a bass, went to his mic, and then I got behind the drums, and then we arranged the song. That's how the bridge came. That's how all the little like the little rhythmic moves, like the da-da-da-da-dum at the top of the second verse, all that stuff kind of came out of us just like jamming as a rhythm section, which is kind of funny because that's how the band started. When we were in bands in high school together, I was the drummer. Tyson just played bass. And then I remember he one day he brought in a song that he wrote, like, all right, bro, all right, bass player, show us your song. And it was fucking great. And then he got in my closet to record the vocal. We were like, holy fuck, he sings way better than this other guy.
Yeah. So we're better friends with him, but man, I think we got to hire Tyson.
But, and then high school happened, and, I didn't really care about that, and I didn't have anything else going on, and Tyson was having a great time coming over and playing songs with his friends. It ended up just being me and him at band practice, him playing bass and singing and me playing drums. And then when we wrote Move Along, it kind of came about that way, and it felt so natural, and it was so fun, and we were so excited about it. I thought that was kind of funny that it kind of went back to like the birth of the band itself.
Yeah.
And then from there, the other guys came in, we kind of worked it out, the guitar arrangements, with our dynamic is I'm usually playing on the high strings on the guitar, and then Mike's playing on the low strings. And then, that was it. It came about pretty easily after we had arranged it in that room. And, then we kept at that for a couple more weeks. It Ends Tonight, the third single, the ballad, back when you would have a ballad single.
Sure.
Because Jeff, our A&R guy, kept on saying, like, we need a ballad. And we already had, like, this song called Straight Jacket Feeling, that we were stoked on. It's a deep cut. We were like, that's slow. That's the ballad. That's fine. But once we had the demo for Move Along, which we just recorded live, I'm sure you'll play it on the show. The recording is piss poor, but it's a live recording in that plywood box. I recorded the vocals in that motel room. Tyson was in the bathroom and did the vocals. And then we did, It Ends Tonight came about this similar way. Tyson was at the Korg Triton playing a piano patch, and I sat down at the drums, and we arranged that song in a similar way. And it was about that time when we sent those awful demos to Jeff at that time. That's another part of the story, is how many fucking labels we were on between our first and our second record. I don't know what label he was working for at that time. Maybe Geffen. I don't know. He was like, okay, I'm coming to Atlanta. We're like, okay, weird. Like,
yeah, what do we do?
We thought you guys just sent us here to be marooned forever. Like, so he came down, and at this point, Howard Benson was in the conversation. We'd talked and we'd met with other producers. Like I said, we started possibly. We thought we were just going to go make another record with Tim, which we would have been lucky to do. But I think once the major label machine kind of kicked in, and once we we had enough success where we could take meetings with people like Brendan O'Brien or Dave Sardi.
Yeah, for sure.
And we did, and that would have been amazing. Like, I think the way we ended up as such a well-oiled, rehearsed machine to make this record, I think it would have been a great record to make with Brendan O'Brien or something like that. But Howard seemed like the right fit. He came down to Atlanta along with Jeff and sat in that rehearsal room and listened to me and Tyson play those 2 songs, just those 2. And we're like, all right, cool, let's go make a record. Like, oh, fucking Christ, thank God.
Yeah. Well, and that's great that it aligned up like that for you guys, because Howard heard through the rehearsal space, the plywood. He could hear he could hear the hits, and that's what he's great at. As great as some of those after-mentioned producers are, Brendan O'Brien, those guys, you wouldn't have made the same record. I feel like 2 worlds collided that had to. You and Tyson have great pop sensibilities, but Howard's just such a great composer. Mm-hmm. And I have to ask you, I know after we made our first record with Howard, it made all of us better players, because we had to replicate this wall of sound that was coming at you. This
quadrupled rhythm guitars on every fucking song.
yeah, and I'm one guitar player,
right?
And he layered vocals, and that was the first time that our harmonies really were coming to life and those things. So I'm glad that it worked out and you got him with Howard. And what a character! We were talking before we got rolling that, and I know some of the listeners have heard me talk about Howard, but I think we were the band right before you. We were making our In With the Out Crowd album.
Yeah.
And you guys were in there just after us. It might have been in tandem near the end, because I remember being in there at some point. I think I might have flown out.
There were a lot of bands in and out. I remember, because he's kind of it's a machine. Like it's kind of a conveyor belt in the best way. His records sound amazing. He's got a great team. But yeah, I remember Mike Kim came in one day to cut that Under Pressure single they did with The Used. Thrice came in. I think they were maybe going to make a record together. We probably ran into you guys there. I think Flyleaf was there too. Like, there were so many bands going through that Howard machine in 2005.
Yeah, I want to think I ran into one of you guys who were out there. And one last thing, because we got on here, I'm kind of at a loss for words, and Nick's saying he's a huge fan of the show, that Mike turned you on to it. We were talking a bunch. I said, we got to stop talking and we got to hit the record button so we could get all this. But I don't know how long this episode's going to be, but I have to say real quick for everybody out there, a little interesting aside. Right around the time COVID happened, a good buddy of mine, Mass Giorgini, hit me up, and Mass said, hey, I'm buddies with Mike from the Rejects, and let's do a 7-inch. I'm like, okay.
No way.
Yeah, he's like, we'll get Stefan Egerton to play drums, and you can play guitar and sing. I'm like, I don't even want to play guitar. I just want to sing. Yeah, I'll let Mike play the guitar. Mike's great.
I don't think I knew about that. That's incredible.
Because we had these back and forth emails that kept going back and forth, and it just didn't happen. It was one of those pipe dreams.
Bummer.
I know, it was a total bummer. I would have loved that, but yeah, just it's crazy how our paths have crossed, and the fact that you hit us up and wanted to do this, it's so awesome.
Like I was telling you, I've done the deep dive. I love this type of podcast, and your energy and your just attention to detail and like willingness to like get as nerdy as the guest wants to is fucking incredible. Both of you guys.
Thank you.
Also, I feel like we did Slam Dunk together back in like 2013, 2014 maybe. And didn't you guys host like an after party at like a Brewdog brewery one night?
Yes.
Okay.
Then okay.
Dude, I remember going over to the UK in 2012. We were opening up for Blink that summer, and I was like, "Oh my god, the UK finally has microbrews. This is fucking incredible. Like, it's not going to be like Grolsch every fucking night." And so I was so stoked that like you guys were putting on parties at the Brewdog Brewery.
Brewdog are good people, but
hell yeah.
I do want to jump into this song, and if you listen to enough episodes, Nick, you will know I've talked about songs that anything that gets over 3 minutes. If it's not the right song, it becomes just too much. It's laborious.
Oh, dude, every song on our first record was like 4.5 minutes long. It was insane.
I can't believe this song, and I always go back to say that it's good songwriting. This song's 4 minutes. It does not feel like it.
Oh, and you know what's funny? Howard wanted us to make it longer. Because we had an abrupt hard ending, like you might have heard on the demo, and he's like, "No, just loop it. We'll just fade it out." That adds like 20 seconds.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're going to get to that demo in a little bit. I do want to talk about it. I took some notes on it because it's really interesting. But the song's 4 minutes long. This intro, great drum tom intro. It's, I was trying to think of songs with a tom intro like this that I hate. I can't think of one. This is like George of the Jungle or I Want Candy by Bow Wow Wow. It's like when a song starts with that drum beat, it rarely falls off the cliff, and I love it here.
Thanks, man.
That goes for 4 bars. The drum tones are just sick. They sound huge. On bar 5, the bass and tambourine come in. The tambourine's panned off left. The bass tone is ripping here.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's some guitar feedback kind of coming in, a swell in the left and right speakers. And then 8 more bars of those stereo guitars. Talking about that feel on the Korg earlier, Nick, and this song always reminded me of like a calypso reggae feel.
Totally.
And I don't know if that's what you were going for, but it was so different of a sound at the time. I wasn't hearing pop and modern rock bands with that flavor.
Right. That's something that Mike said to me yesterday. He was like, we all thought it was weird that like there was nothing on the radio with this kind of, like you said, calypso, or our guy always called it the Bo Diddley beat, which it wasn't really that either, but it was kind of a Frankenstein of a lot of things. On the demo, it's the intro is different. It starts with that acoustic guitar, starts with the chorus, and then we go into the drums with the bass, and that's just kind of a little connector between the opening chorus and the riff.
When all you gotta keep is strong, move along like I know you do. And even when your hope is gone, move along just to make it through. Move along.
I think for me, just starting with the drums, even in the studio, I remember being like, but it's not just going to be drums, right? We got to do something else. Because to me, it was just like Mr. Brownstone or like something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, like it can't just be drums. But you're right. The tones ended up really sick. And we did something cool. All of our records, we've used analog tape in some fashion. And our third record, even, we did the whole thing to tape, which was a time suck. But but on this one, we used tape for this drum intro. I think I sent you a picture of Chris with his mallets, just playing toms. What we did was we recorded at twice the speed, so I don't know if it was like 30 IPS or whatever the technical term is, and Chris had to play that intro twice as fast. It was like do 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 do, like over and over, and then we slowed it down to half speed so that everything was an octave lower. And if you listen to that intro in headphones, there is an insane amount of tape hiss, which I never noticed until yesterday when I went back and listened to the song for the first time in 15 years or whatever.
I thought that was intentional.
Oh no.
Okay, because I was like, they were going for that ambient, and sometimes when you get that those high crispy, sometimes they're meant to be there. I thought it was part of the process.
Oh, that's just a bunch of half speed tape hiss is what that is.
That's cool though.
But yeah, and then you mentioned the tambourine. That's another thing that Howard really pushed us to do. There were a couple times, like I said earlier with the writing, like we were very self-contained, and we also were very self-contained when it comes to performing. At least until this point. Like, Tyson and I played every single stitch of that first record, just he and I. The second record, we were going to do the same thing, but the 4 of us. And there was one point where Howard was like, we should bring in a percussionist. I think it'll really bring things to life.
Let's bring in the best guy in the world, Lenny Castro. What do you think?
Exactly. That was his idea. And we were like, at the time, ignorant us, we were like, give me a fucking tambourine. I'll shake it. It'll be fine. That is a next level experience to get to watch someone like Lenny Castro lay down an entire album in half of a day. Like, give me a break.
It's unreal.
Yeah.
And the direction that a guy like him gets from the producer is, can you pull back a little bit? And like, you're trying to listen. It's like, well, okay, and then can you play ahead of the beat a little bit, or do this or do that? And any direction you give, he plays it perfectly. And that's why you hire those guys. But that's so interesting. And it's really funny. You know, we had a lot of records, my band, to finally get to the point where we were working with a producer that was telling us to do stuff. And it kind of went gradually. You know, it started out with our buddy'd show up drunk and go, you should double that chorus at the end. Like, he was our first producer, right? So by the time we got to the fifth record, it's like we were starting to be able to take direction. Here you guys were kids. 19, 20 years old. This is your second record, and you're that, and I love the passion, okay? You're that steadfast of like, no one's playing the tambourine. I can play the tambourine.
Yeah, all four of us were like, any of us could do this. But dude, Lenny showed up one day near the end of tracking. He came in, you know, his box truck showed up first and, you know, unloaded just all kinds of toys, like filled up the entire live room. And Howard would have him do a shaker track, a tambourine track, and then a miscellaneous track, you know, and that would be, you know, on It Ends Tonight, Lenny added some congas. On Straight Jacket Feeling, he played like a bell tree. It was kind of just, you know, the whatever take, and a lot of that stuff ended up making it. It was great. And what was so funny is that he would come into the control room, and we would listen to one song at a time. But the whole time, he would just be talking and telling his stories, not paying attention at all. Yet when it came time to track the song, he would go in and knock it out in one take. Like, we're like, so you were listening? Like, that's insane.
I know he's played on a couple of our songs, and it's just incredible to watch him work. I got to ask about this intro. Are there any keypads or synths behind those guitars? I know we got some, we got those delays and whatever you got going on those guitars there, but I thought maybe, you know, Howard likes to do layers like that, and
he does.
There's also a palm muted guitar following along, kind of tucked underneath. It's just awesome.
Yep. Yeah, well, thank you. But no, there's no synths in that intro. Like you said, there's some feedback leading into it. Yeah. But I think it is just that ambience and that the space that the drums and that riff kind of provide. And since I'm not actually playing every note of that riff, I'm only playing half of it. You know, and dun 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 dun, and then there's a 16th note slapback delay on it. Yeah, I guess that kind of adds that kind of airy kind of quality to it. But no synths on that. Howard did add some stuff later in the song, which I'm sure we'll get to. I'm sure you picked that out. But
well, and there's also, let's not forget, the Pro Tools engineer Paul DeCarli. Like Paul
just
would do
chain smoking back there editing 12 hours a day.
Yeah, like. This guy was a whole other level because people, you know, were starting to become, around the time we started, working with Paul, 2003, 2004, becoming Pro Tools gurus. These were the guys that you have to get. And he would take a pair of stereo guitars. He'd take the direct line in, before they went through any amps, and he would just play with it. And he would layer it, and then he'd put those behind certain things. So you'd walk in and be like, well, those guitars sound different in the chorus. Like, yeah, I'm going to mute them right now. Like, whoa, now here they are in. It's like, but when you stereo them and listen to them alone, they would sound like garbage. Sometimes, be like,
interesting.
Like, but when he would blend them in, so there was things like that going on that I didn't know if that was happening here.
I never got the multi-track from Howard. All I have are the CLA sessions that he mixed to. Yeah, and a lot of stuff, because CLA condenses everything down to 48 channels so he can mix on his SSL.
And that's Chris Lord-Alge for everybody out there.
Sorry. Yeah. There might have been some things like summed or, bounced down, some layers. But, I mean, it's all guitars. I just don't know what was done to them prior to CLA putting them up on his SSL. But that lower palm muted part, that's Mike's part. So, like I was saying earlier, like I'm usually up on the twinkly strings and then he's on the lower ones. So yeah, we're kind of creating just a bigger harmonic palette for that riff.
I love what those guitars do together, and they just sound huge here. Verse 1 comes right after the intro.
Go ahead as you waste your days with thinking. When you're full, everyone sings. Another day and you've had your fill of sinking with the life held in your hands.
You were talking before, Nick, that you don't write the lyrics; these are Tyson's words. But
sure.
we can definitely talk about them. I love the message. I don't know exactly what's going on here, but you want to talk about a positive, uplifting song. This is it. Go ahead as you waste your days with thinking. When you fall, everyone stands. Another day, and you've had your fill of sinking with your life held in your. And I'm calling the next, we're going to read the next part, but I'm calling the next part pre-chorus.
Oh yeah, that's what we call it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not the verse.
Same page.
We're going to save that for a second. Verse 1 here, on the second and fourth lines, we had never worked with anybody that did this. Howard was the first one. He likes to double things.
Yep.
And they're not everywhere. It's only on the 2 and 4 here.
Strategic doubles, yeah.
Yes. And it's not super loud. You don't really hear it, but you feel it. And it's just that production element, especially if you're going for what you guys were going for, that rock pop sound, it's absolutely brilliant. Pre-chorus comes in.
Hands are shaking cold. These hands are meant to hold.
Hands are shaking cold. These hands are meant to hold. And I'm saying that Speak to Me is not part of the chorus. I'm saying Speak to Me is still part of the pre-chorus.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. We could have had a knockdown, drag-out argument about that. It could have lasted another half hour. Thank you for agreeing.
Yeah,
it's just bass, guitar, and vocals here.
Yeah.
And the subtone on that bass that's happening.
I think there was 4 bass tracks on this record. That was actually one of the things that like Howard was bragging about when he came to Atlanta. He was like, "Oh, dude, for the bass, we're going to do an amp, we're going to do a DI, we're going to do a Sans amp, and we're going to do a sub." And we're like, what the fuck? 4 bass? Yeah, this guy.
Well, again, there's this kind of, and there's almost like a swirly feeling that's happening here. The lead vocals have like a high octave double on this part.
Yeah, Tyson has a beautiful falsetto, so we would do that a lot, where he would double the vocal an octave higher in a falsetto voice.
Yeah, if anybody out there goes to listen to the song Hopeless Case by Less Than Jake, I'm in the vocal booth one day and Howard says, "All right, we're done, but I want you to do one more thing." I said, okay. He had me doing harmonies, all this other stuff on it.
Hell
he says, "I want you to sing the whole thing an octave up, falsetto." I go, "You're kidding me, right?" I said, "My falsetto's terrible. I mean, I sound horrible falsetto. It's like, I got a na-na-na-na-na." He's like, "No, sing
That's
it."
great.
I sang the performance. If you listen, you got to listen hard. But in the verses, it's tucked under there. It is that pop thing. You listen to all of them. Taylor Swift, I don't care. They all do it. It fills out the voice.
Seems like a losing fight. If you could see it through my eyes, then you'd believe me.
That's a move now. Like, that's part of vocal tracking nowadays. Everybody does the octave, or they'll just copy the track and stick like Little Altar Boy, like a plug-in that will create an octave higher. They'll stick that on there too. But yeah, like Howard did open us up. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Tyson is super creative with harmonies too, coming up with super just interesting intervals like seconds and sixths and like just stuff that you'd never think of. Not your basic, like, okay, I'm just going to sing everything a third higher now. But Howard definitely did introduce us to things like singing an octave higher or a low harmony, which we hadn't done on our first record. Like, that was the thing. Like, when you're kind of, we come from a more pop punk background. So, like, Tyson would just sing really high, and then he would sing a harmony even higher than that, and then that was it. But this record, there's definitely a lot more pads, vocal pads, and a lot more lower harmonies, and just really interesting shit.
Yeah, that's so cool. I could talk to you about this all day. The nerding out with Howard, because I just learned.
Feel free to edit any of that shit out.
Well, no, because I learned so much. He taught me just about he'd be sitting around the studio. You can attest to this. He just out of nowhere, he'd be eating an Oreo in his sweatpants.
Oh my god, the Oreos! Okay, yeah. So I wanted to compare notes on this. He would show up every day in the same sweatsuit. I'm told it's not the same. I'm told his closet is lined with black sweatsuits and Philadelphia Eagles jerseys.
Yep.
He would show up in a different black sweatsuit and a different Eagles jersey every day. And then he would just pick up a random guitar pick from like the coffee table and scrape the cream off the Oreo and just lick it off a guitar pick that had been God knows where. At the very least, somebody else's mouth. Like,
I could corroborate all of this. If Howard calls me in a week, I could also deny it. So
just blame me.
Yeah, but this dude out of nowhere, he'd be scraping an Oreo and he'd look over and he'd go, "Hey, you know those when it does the key change and Living on a Prayer at the end? Those are all women singing those high backing vocals." I'm like, "Really?" He's like, yeah. That's what they do. They'd have women singers come in to hit those high notes. I'm just
Yeah,
like,
if Mutt Lange
okay.
wasn't producing, you would have to bring in women.
Yeah. He's like, okay, this came completely out of left field. How's that Oreo? You know, he's like, what's going on? But
oh, it's incredible.
I'll keep you my dirty little secret.
Hey, everybody, don't go anywhere. We got lots more with Nick Wheeler coming up after a few words from our sponsors.
Mad Magazine,
advertising mascots,
B-movie posters,
and cartoons.
Oh yeah, can't forget cartoons.
If you get the funky connection that ties these pop culture gems together, you'll dig Two Designers Walk Into a Bar.
See, we're a couple of creatively curious pals living between the bookends of grand museums and dive bars.
Hey, you know the place, the sweet spot where highbrow and lowbrow become drinking buddies.
So join our barroom chats as we talk influential work and uncover stories of how the familiar became iconic. Think behind the music for the stuff we love.
Check out our website at twodesignerswalkintoabar.com.
And listen wherever you get your podcasts or visit evergreenpodcasts.com.
My dirty little secret. Who has to know?
And now, back to the show.
On the Line, Speak to Me, and the demo, this part was there. And I want to talk about the demo real quick before we go forward. Just real quick. Demo was really interesting. As you mentioned, starts off with a chorus. That intro drum beat and feel, it was there, okay? That heartbeat was there. The groove was a few beats slower. And if I know anything from Howard, he likes to keep things, he doesn't want to speed up. I'm glad it's sped up. The song's called Move Along. I felt like it needed to move along a couple beats heavier there.
I've gotta know I got you back in now. Yeah, you changed somehow, and it stands that rivers flow with red disaster sin in your mouth and on your hands for millions cold. These hands were meant to hold. Speak to me.
The lyrics are different, definitely in the verses. There's no choir here, no choir at the end. And the chorus lyric at the end, I want to talk about this real quick.
Yeah.
Because 15 million can't be wrong. And the other lyric was 15 million strong, we move along.
Speak to me when all you gotta keep is strong. Move along, like I know you do. 'Cause 50 million can't be wrong. Move along just to make it through. Move along. We're 50 million strong. We move along.
I kind of got we were Flintstones kids, 10 million strong and growing
exactly.
vibe.
That's what I said yesterday when I was talking to Mike. I was like, I know what the song was originally written about, and we can get into that, but I want to say that we changed the lyric for more reasons than just the one. And I was like, I feel like we were talking about it sounding like a Flintstones vitamins commercial in the post-chorus.
Growing, we're Flintstones kids. 10 million strong and growing. We're Flintstones kids. 10 million strong.
Flintstones, America's favorite.
And growing.
I didn't know if this song was people struggling through. I had read some things online. Could be things like suicide and different. So 15 million strong. Are those the people that survive this, or they're the survivors living with survivor's guilt of members of their family that passed away? So thought it was an interesting lyric, but it did not make the final cut. However, I call it the heartbeat. The pulse of the song was there.
The chorus did not change. The
No.
chorus, it's the old it's the thing where the verses, that's for us, that's for the artist, and the chorus is for everybody else. So that chorus was there, and that did not change. But yeah, what's kind of funny is that we changed, and I don't know. I mean, Tyson was obviously involved, but I don't remember if that was a Howard thing, if that was a Jeff Sosno with the label thing. But the idea was just to make the song a little more universal. And what's funny is that what you thought it was about is not at all what it was originally about. So it was already kind of universal, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, and that's what I love about lyrical interpretation. You just never know. Up to the part where it says "Speak to me" here, the drums do a great fill under the vocal before we launch into chorus 1. But up to this part, what does the song mean to you? What do you think the Tyson's trying to evoke with these lyrics?
Again, like I said, the verses, that's for the artist. You know, I've never grilled them about. Or I've never sat them down like this, like you do, like read the lyrics back, or like tell me what this means. But
you don't do that when you're in a band with somebody.
You don't. And I mean, I'm a '90s kid. Like I grew up on grunge. I didn't know what the fuck those guys were talking about. I just accepted it. I was like, this song rocks. Like I love the vibe and the melody. But originally, you know, this song was written, like I said, when we were all, you know, living in, I mean, let's just say it, squalor in Atlanta, essentially. So, you know, the only thing we had was the black. I don't think it was black and white. That's just my memory playing tricks on me. But like, whatever TV was in the hotel, like we had like a few basic cable channels. And we were also in our early 20s. This was kind of like our college dorm experience because none of us really ever got that.
It's amazing you stayed as focused as you could, being dropped off in the middle of Atlanta with bars around. I mean, I know what I would have done.
Oh, I mean, don't get me wrong. We were regulars at the Righteous Room down the street, and that place is still there. I fucking love it there. Great jukebox. But but you know, we were starting to think for ourselves and starting to you know, challenge things. And this was right around the time of the second George Bush's re-election. So we were watching a lot of the debates, and the song was originally very politically fueled. Like it was kind of like a response to George Bush winning a second term, you know, because, you know, we were all rooting for the other team. And that's kind of what it was originally about, and that's where the you know, 15 million, or was it 50 million? I forget what the original lyric was, but
it might have said 50. I thought it said 15. But
okay, I don't remember, but I think that was talking about the people who voted for John Kerry.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So then when it came time to make the record, it was just, I mean, it was also 2005. Like I think back then, if you were in the entertainment business, it was safer to be non-political. I think today is way different. I think it is important to, you know, voice your opinion and find like-minded people to work with, as well as fans and vice versa. But yeah, back then it was like, let's just make this more universal, and not just to be like, let's be politically safe. It's more just like, let's just make this more palatable and approachable to the general public, general rock fans. You know what I mean, and our fans.
And sometimes that's not the right way to go. And again, hindsight's always 20/20. I think that was the right move here. I really do.
Totally. I do too. And, you know, and I did not remember that not only did the lyrics change in the verse, but the melody pretty much changed completely too.
Oh, yeah. It changed pretty drastically.
But you're right. The heart of the song, the chorus, the lyrics, the melody, nothing changed about that. That was the silver bullet there.
Well, getting into chorus 1.
When all you gotta keep is strong, move along like I know you do. And even when your hope is gone, move along just to make it through, move along.
When all you got to keep is strong, move along like I know you do. And even when your hope is gone, move along just to make it through. Stereo guitars, bass, and drums. There's a great shuffle beat on that hi-hat. It makes it so danceable. You know, this really is, this chorus to me is like a dance song. It just makes you, I've said this before on the show, if something gets my feet moving, I'm not a dancer, but there's something that about this shuffle that just makes you want to kind of bob and weave and dance a bit.
Yeah, we, for a couple songs on the record, this one, a song called Stab My Back, we just kind of wanted more, you know, more of a groove on this record than, you know, just go back to the first record, every song is so fast. Like, I don't think there's a song under like 140 BPM. It's like the ballad was over 100 BPM. Like,
Boom, 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 boom.
yeah. So on this one, we wanted a little bit more of a groove, and then that drum part. I mean, if you didn't get the reference already, when I wrote the guitar riff, it was on an AC30 with a Memory Man. I'm a big U2 fan, and I was going through a big U2 phase at the time. So when it came down to sitting down at the drums and creating that, it's like, okay, what would Larry Mullen do? Like 16th notes, and then kind of alternating between snares and toms on like random beats.
Yeah, little Sunday Bloody Sunday kind of vibe.
Totally. That was kind of the spirit of it, at least, especially with the with the original lyric and stuff. Like it just felt like.
I mean, I'm hearing the song with a big open hi-hat in the choruses. It would have worked, but it wouldn't have made you feel like that. And those are those nuances that you talk about. And as a songwriting partner to Tyson, I know you guys probably complete each other's musical sentences.
Oh yeah.
And when you find somebody like that, it's a precious thing.
For
We
sure.
get a harmony, and great harmonies on 2 and 4 in the chorus. And notice I didn't use the next 2 lines as a chorus. I'm calling this a post-chorus. I love songs with a post-chorus, and it's just the 2 lines move along here. The first one's just Tyson. The second one has a killer harmony on it. And then it's 8 bars of the music there, which is over that intro progression and the feel of that intro, that calypso things back there.
Move along. So a day when you've lost yourself completely.
Interesting, on the demo, the next part, and you had talked about this a little bit ago, that dun in verse 2. It's such a cool part. It only happens. I thought for sure that I'm like, oh, that's a Howard thing. That sounds like, hey, we got to get into this second verse differently. But the fact that you already had that, and then I got to thinking, I'm amazed that it got past Howard, because you could have just, because he doesn't like mucking up the waters.
Nope.
So now you show what plans of change you have, and you change.
Couple of comments about that. First of all, I think little moments like that come from being able to set up as a band and play a song. You're not just copying and pasting, like, okay, let me just take the track from verse 1 and fly it over to verse 2. You're in there like as a band, and you're like, okay, cool, like we did it this way for the first verse, let's fuck it up in the second verse. And just you're entertaining yourselves, and you're kind of trying to hold your own interest and each other's interest through the arrangement. And that kind of stuff is, it came out of being able to set up and rehearse and arrange the songs as a band. And then in that re-intro, I don't think it's in the beginning, but in this re-intro, there is an element that sounds like a keyboard or some sort of programming, but it's actually Tyson singing through a Leslie speaker.
Oh, that's what that is.
Which was something that, Howard wanted to fuck around with. I don't know if that was in his bag of tricks or not, but he mentioned, trying things like that. And so Tyson's just singing "Move Along" and then holding out that last note, and then da 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 from that rotating speaker.
Yes.
And that again gives it this just airy, just kind of otherworldly quality that isn't just guitar, bass, drums.
Move along. So a day when you've lost yourself completely could be a night when your life ends. Such a heart that will lead you to deceiving. All the pain held in your hands are shaking.
Oh, it's so good, that part. It's great. Well, that dugga the 1 2 3 4 5 big stereo guitars, bass and drums. The toms just sound really huge there. The lyric is "So a day when you've lost yourself completely," and those drum fills come on "so a day" and "lost yourself" in that first line. Could be a night when your life ends. Such a heart that will lead you to deceiving. All the pain held in your. We get harmonies on "night when your life ends" and "pain held in your." I'm a huge harmony guy, and I always talk about it. And I get in here and I look, and I love where the placement of the harmonies. You could have left them off verse 2, but the song's building. It's it's climbing up the mountain here, and Howard's great at that.
Yeah, he really is. And I think, like I said, I can't speak to exactly who came up with the harmony ideas at which point. Like I said, Tyson's amazing at them. Howard's really great at them too. But each record we put out, there became progressively more and more and more harmonies. And now it's like, there's just not enough of us. Like, we can't do all of these at the same time anymore.
You start to fall in love with the harmony in a different way, because once you start opening your mind that, you've been singing in thirds this whole time. What if you tried this? Then a light bulb goes off. You go, oh, you could do different harmonies and weird stuff, and we can get into Mr. Bungle territory. Oh, okay, and then that's where my head starts to explode.
Oh, and something you touched on that I'd love to talk about is just Howard was really big on the drums staying out of the way of the vocal. And like you said, you were surprised how this made it past Howard.
For sure.
Howard was a busy guy. He was making 4 records at a time most days. When we were in the studio, tracking guitars and bass and, just, all the overdubby kind of stuff, Howard wasn't even there. We were working with Mike Plotnikoff, his amazing engineer, and then Keith Nelson at the time was his guitar tech, who this was during Buck Cherry's hiatus.
Yeah.
This is pre-Crazy Bitch. But yeah, so Howard came in the first 2 days, because the first 2 days were drums. We knocked all those out in the first 2 days, and then for 6 weeks, our drummer was bored out of his skull just playing video games. But Howard was there for those first 2 days to, quote, make sure the drums don't get in the way of the vocal.
I've heard that. I've heard that out of his mouth.
Yeah, exactly. And he's exactly right. We straightened out a lot of things. Again, I feel like this beat in verse 2, I feel like I'm surprised any of verse 2 made it past Howard, but I was really stoked on the kind of dizzying thing that the, bouncing between the snare and the toms and the hat kind of has here. But yeah, then Howard would come and he would track vocals with Tyson in the loft above the studio. There's this like kind of windy staircase that went up to a loft with like a circus tent for a ceiling. It was
like a fort, like a kid's blanket.
I don't know
fort.
how Tyson didn't go mad up there. Maybe he did. I don't know. But
you couldn't run that. You couldn't run the AC because the microphone would pick it up. So you'd be sweating your ass off in there trying to get a vocal take while Howard's telling you to do a falsetto harmony and you're not comfortable with it.
He's like, just let me out of this fucking room.
Yeah, but it was seriously like that. You talked about the feel on verse 2. The drums changed the feel a bit here as that shuffle hi-hat is here that wasn't present in verse 1.
Yeah.
It's awesome. The stereo guitars and bass and a new guitar part. It's like a delay and flanger sound come in here.
Oh, yeah.
It's such a cool texture. Is that what that was?
All the guitar nerds ask me about this one, too.
Yeah, that sounds
Some
killer.
people think it's a banjo. I mean, it was originally written as kind of a banjo-type part. I ended up putting a banjo on a different song on the record.
I know you did. I was going to say, I read the credits written like banjo.
Yeah, I think it was a second verse of a song called Night Drive. But it was kind of that vibe. But we just took that same AMS delay. It wasn't a memory man at this point. We'd moved to the digital delay to keep it like super locked in time. An old school AMS digital delay and what's called a Q zone pedal, which is essentially it's a Dunlop pedal, just like the Crybaby wah, that same company. But it's like if you turned on a wah pedal and just like left it cocked at like a specific point.
Okay.
In the sweep. Only this pedal allows you to actually control the amount of like the Q amount of that peak. So yeah, it's just like this really kind of honky just tone with a quarter note delay on it, but
it's killer.
Or eighth note delay, I guess.
It's so cool, and I want to talk real quick about that part. Was that something that you said, hey, we're doing overdubs with Plotnikoff, or did Howard ever say, hey, we need something in the second verse, or did you guys kind of know?
Howard wouldn't have been there. We were, we would lay down after the drums. We would do basic rhythm section tracks, and that's what Tyson would sing to. And then we would do more ear candy kind of stuff. And it was like, okay, verse 2, what should we add? And I was like, I have this like weird banjo-y idea. And it was one of those things where like, here's a terrible idea. Like, I can't wait for you guys to veto this. And then we're like, no, like, don't play it on a banjo, clearly, but let's do this other weird shit to it. And it's actually really hard to play. I still fuck it up every night playing this part.
It's great. Well, the second pre-chorus here.
Hands are shaking cold. Your hands are mine to hold. Speak to me.
Hands are shaking cold, but we get a different lyric the second time. Your hands are mine to hold. And there's a great like
unity, man.
I don't know if it's the same pedal, but like a chorus flanger, and maybe a synth here on this part with kick, hi-hat, and sporadic snare hits that are happening here. Kind of harking back to that U2 thing that you were saying.
Yeah.
I can really hear that Larry Mullen drumming style here. Was there any synth there at all?
I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
that
Yeah.
that little thing, that was the same tone that's in the second verse, but that was just like kind of like onomatopoeia on a guitar. I was like, he says shaking, so let me do this like fast little tremolo thing.
Yeah. Not saying that you didn't create these sounds at all, but again, who knows what Paul was doing to some of them too.
Totally.
And not saying again that you didn't create all these sounds, but there's a lot of moving parts at Bay 7 Studios.
There sure is. And the only reason I'm so confident about that stuff is because I do all the tracks and stuff for our band's live show. And so like I know the sessions, at least the CLA sessions, like the back of my hand. But like I said, a lot of these sounds were summed or bounced down. So if there were other layers to them,
Then they're there.
I might not even know.
Gotcha. I also notice on Speak to Me here, there's a new melody on that line. And that's interesting because the first way that Tyson sings it is so catchy and it evokes such an emotion. And I'm surprised that got past Howard the second time. I never noticed it however many times I've heard this song over the years.
Oh, really?
But just getting it under the microscope going, wow, there's a melody change there. And it seems odd that there would be because
That might have been a in the studio track and vocals with Howard thing, but it might also just be, one of those like vampy ad lib things that you get when you're in a rehearsal room writing a song with a band and you're just trying not to fucking be bored playing the song over and over. I can't speak to that.
There's been other times that I know the Lord Alge brothers and these other mixers have sat there and went, they'll go to another vocal that's up. A lot of times the sessions aren't completely clean when they get to these guys. They'll be like, what does this one sound like? That's cool. I'm gonna throw it in there, so you don't know whose discretion it was at.
Totally.
Chorus 2 comes in, same instrumentation and lyrics as chorus 1. Harmonies are in the same spot, and then we go to post chorus 2.
Yeah.
When all you gotta keep is strong. Move along like I know you do. And even when your hope is gone, move along just to make it through. Move along. When everything is wrong, we move along. Everything is wrong, we move along.
Move along. Go on, go on, go on, go on. When everything is wrong, we move along, and you get those 4 go-ons again. The go-ons are all double vocals. Here we get the intro progression, but it's so much heavier here because the drums and the stereo guitars are just so big in this part. And then from here out in the song, it is hook after hook. You get lambasted, you get hit over the head. And I'm calling the next part, Nick, the bridge.
Yep,
Okay.
that's what we call it.
Okay, yeah, because that was the post-chorus that we get into. When everything is wrong, we move along. Along. It's kind of a call and response that happens again. And then you get the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
The whole bit, like this weird, again, that's a
Triplets,
weird.
baby.
Right. That's an odd thing to have in a pop song like this. I don't recall that being on the demo. Was it there?
That was, but that bridge section where it's just that big, just E flat pedal for 8 bars. It was half as long, so it was just along.
Okay.
Blah, da, do, blah, ga, ga, blah. And then it went back into a full chorus after that. We didn't have the breakdown like on the final master.
Gotcha. Well, and something I did mention I want to talk about because, we're not really going to get into the lyrical meaning of the verses per se, but the chorus. Have you ever looked at lyrics or, that you've listened to, or in this case, I'm looking at them on paper and I'm going, man, that is a songwriter's dream to convey a message that is so just in layman's terms. Like, why couldn't I have wrote this? You know, there's really not much here, but there's a ton here. And I mean that with all my heart.
Totally.
When all you got to keep is strong, move along, like I know you do. It's like looking forward to new beginnings. I mean, this lyric is super powerful and positive.
Yeah, and it connected in a major way. I mean, people have come up to us with just insane stories of just overcoming and things I can't even imagine going through, and this was their anthem for that, and it's incredible. I'm happy that we had the opportunity for so many people to hear it.
I don't know how to talk to fans that come up with the tattoos
right?
sometimes. I don't know how to. They told me that, you know, they were in a car crash with their brother and they survived and they have survivor's guilt. And this song that I've heard the stories as I know you have.
Yeah, totally. Same kind of thing.
I've went back to the bus and shed a tear a few times. It's I'll never get over that feeling, and this song obviously touched people that way.
And it makes you feel guilty. Like you're like, I'm here doing like what I love, and I get to do this every fucking day, and like the perseverance that these people have, I can't even imagine it.
I know that is the perfect word. There is a little bit of guilt. I don't know why I necessarily feel that, but that's the emotion that it evokes. Chorus 3 is just piano, vocals, and this choir. Yeah. In my head, when I got to this part the other day, when I started, preparing for the episode, it was this big, crazy upfront choir. It's really tucked back. Tyson's vocals really front and center.
And it's children.
Yes. I was going to ask. Yeah. It sounds like kids.
When all you gotta keep is strong, move along like I know you do. And even when your hope is gone, move along just to make it through. When all you gotta keep...
It adds this innocence to it.
Totally. I had to go back and look. I was like, did we do like band gang vocals on this? And no, we didn't. It's just lead vocal, doubled lead vocal, Tyson's harmonies, and then this children's choir. Originally, this breakdown wasn't a part of the song.
Yeah, it wasn't on the demo.
No, it wasn't. And it was probably a Howard thing when we were in pre-production talking about the breakdown. And I remember just basically doing a broken down version of the chorus as is, which starts on a C minor.
Sure, and you could have palm muted that with one guitar or whatever.
Totally. And I think I just programmed some like cheesy MIDI piano that we eventually we had demo-itis for that. And when talk of bringing in a real like pianist came up, we're like, no, the demo's great. Like that cheesy MIDI shit that I programmed is perfect. It's charming.
Yeah. That chord Casio sounds great.
But it didn't sound right in that minor key. So I think it was me. I don't remember, but I was like, what if we just switch those first two chords and make the breakdown when the kids come in a major key, so that, or in the relative major, I guess. It's still in the key, but it starts with the major chord. Just for that, I don't know, just more hope and more uplifting. And then when the band kicks back in, it's like, oh, we're dark and minor again.
Yeah, well, I know the song's capoed, but I want to say it's like D flat is the first chord here versus what I'm calling it. It's not this because it's capoed, but it's D flat major. As your major, you're talking about.
We're actually tuned down half a step, and it's E flat.
E flat, okay, yeah. and then I'm calling it. I guess it would be B flat. Would be the other chord, maybe whatever it is. the turnaround here is amazing because you don't really hear it again, but you feel it. When I first heard this song, and I want to say it was on the radio, when this part came in with the choir, I'm like, okay, uncle, it's for real. It's like, what else can they do? It was like the song was already awesome, and I was just like, man, you really, this part just, it's such a huge emotional it's a relief coming off everything else, and not that you need a relief, but that is pretty jarring. That dun 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 that the band does before this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're coming off the bridge, which is just a pedal on that E flat, and then the breakdown starts on E flat too. That was something we were worried about. It's like you don't start a section with the same chord you ended the last one. That's weird. But I guess because of the scene change, you don't notice as much. And then Howard was just coming off that POD record he made with Youth of a Nation. So I don't know if they were the same kids, but he brought in a bunch of little kids that we didn't have any interaction with the kids. I don't know if there was like some rule about that, like don't let kids around like shithead musicians or what, but I did deal directly with the choir conductor and like gave her like sheet music and shit for it.
I wonder if Howard hid his Oreos before the kids got there.
Don't touch Howard's fucking Oreos, man.
No. He'll even smack a kid for that. This part is awesome. This is so good. And the last line, and there's no harmonies here. It's really personal. This vocal, just to make it through, is just vocals, and then we go into the first double chorus of the song. And to your point, when I was playing along to this, we got to the breakdown part, and I'm like, how am I at the wrong chord? It went back to the major intro progression, which is it's so genius.
Sneaky.
Move along just to make it through. When all you gotta keep is strong. Move along like I know you do. And even when your hope is gone, move along just to make it through. When all you gotta keep is strong. Move along like I know you do. And even when your hope is gone, move along just to make it through.
Chorus 3. It's our first double chorus. There's harmonies on every line here. It's the only time in the song it happens. We don't get harmonies on the other choruses all the way through. We also get some call and responses halfway through just to make it through. It's like a backing vocal that Tyson's doing.
Ad-lib track,
Yeah, know you do. And the last line, move along. What I love about those tracks, you refer to as an ad-lib track. I'd have those where it'd be like, Howard or whoever producer would say, hey, we got the track. Do me a favor. Just sing this one with reckless abandon.
Right, totally.
Reach for notes you wouldn't reach for. Scream a little harder if you want to. Maybe take a part down a little bit, the edge off it. Just kind of evoke a different emotion here.
Totally.
And lo and behold, little things like this might show up in the song. I love the tag. I'm calling it the outro here, okay? It's kind of like post-chorus too. You get the 4 go-ons again with those gang vocals. Right back what is wrong, we move along. And other vocals are kind of swirling in and out here.
Oh yeah, kitchen sink. That's our MO, man. Like everything you've heard in the song, put it in the last chorus. Like
yeah, it's killer. We get the go on line again with the gang vocals. Right back what is wrong, we move along. There's a great band dynamics here. It's like a dang 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 dang.
So that right there was the end of the song originally.
Yes.
Bunka 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 bunka. And that's still to this day how we end it live, and that's how we ended it in the tracking session too. But yeah, I guess Howard thought this was the kind of song that needed a fade out. I hear they're coming back now, but for a while, like this might have been the last song that faded out for quite a while.
Yeah, what are you guys, the Captain of Tennille, like a yacht rock band? I know the first time we did a fade out, one of my punk buddies from Gainesville was like,
"Sell out."
You did a fade out. Like we were having a beer, and I'm like. I felt like an a-hole. I'm like, yeah, what's wrong with a fade out? He's like, what are you, Christopher Cross?
Totally. Yeah, and again, when you're in a rehearsal space, jamming on a song, you're not thinking about a fade out. We were like, okay, how do we end it? And we came up with a way to end it, and then he was like, oh, just fucking loop the end and fade it out, and that's that was an after thing.
On the next go on section with the gang vocals, the song starts to fade. Speaking of that fading, right back what is wrong, we move along, and there's a long held out he holds it out there, and then on the last go on, right back what is wrong, we move along. It's barely audible as it trails off.
Yeah.
First of all, I can't believe that 17, 18 years have passed. I don't know where the time went. I could probably speak for you on that. This song, I've always loved it. It was a real joy to break down. I got to ask you, was this the one when you're getting the Chris Lord Algae mixes back and you're in the studio or you're in your car and you got it cranked up and this mix came back, what did that feel like?
Well, there's definitely some story with the mixing and the post process with the record. I do want to touch on something that you were talking about when we were talking about the kitchen sink last chorus. I remember another Howard thing. I don't know if he was just trying to shake things up and create drama. I think there was a period when we made the record. We recorded the record in only 6 weeks because it was such a well-oiled machine over there at Bay 7. But I think he thought it was going too smoothly, and he wanted to start some shit and create drama because, drama and, that kind of shit makes better art, I guess. And as I was saying earlier, like we're very protective of our music and our playing and our performances. Like if we can do it, we want to do it. Clearly, we can't play like Lenny Castro. Sure, bring in Lenny Castro. We actually brought him in for every single record we made after this too, because she's such a fun energy. But I remember he was like, the end of Move Along, it needs something. Like it's not kitchen sink enough. And quote, I remember this because I was so offended by it. He's like, we just need to bring in a ringer, like, just like a session guitar player to, quote, shit all over the end of this song. And I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me, man. And he was like, yeah, like, I think he wanted Omar from Mars Volta to come in and just do some, like, really cool, weird shit. Okay. And I was like, okay, leave, give me a day, we'll fix this. And there's all kinds of, like, feedback that's in pitch, in the key of the song. I broke out my Jackson because I'm a Def Leppard fan. Of course, I have a Jackson that no one will ever see, but it's there. Just some dive bomb shit. Just I tried to shit all over the end of the song, and I guess that was enough.
and I think I'm glad you brought that up because I did have written here. I almost forgot. Thank you, Nick. The crapping all over at the end of the song here. I had it written here. I thought maybe Howard, again, I'm hearing like synths here, but you're telling me that's all guitar stuff.
There is some synths.
There is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Starting in the bridge, there's a pipe organ that comes in along with like a mini Moog, like just like so subby. I couldn't hear it on my computer speakers.
Okay. So it is there.
And there's some like, some twinkly pad stuff in the choruses, and there's an additional one that does come in the end. But yeah, that's along with like all kinds of feedback, all kinds of vocal ad libs, a bunch of little kids. It's everything you can imagine.
So you get the record back, and this song had to have been a standout, right?
It was. I mean, this was the song we were the most proud of, and the label loved it. We were all set to go. This was going to be the first single. CLA works so fast, Chris, the mixer, that we actually we stuck around. Like, we had no reason to go home. Like, nothing was waiting for us there. So, like, we stuck around in LA. None of us lived there at the time. We're like, cool, let's watch this record get mixed. So Chris works so fast that at the end of every day, we would go in and we would hear 1, maybe 2 mixes. We would take it out to our car, our rental PT Cruiser, which terrible car, but I do have some nostalgia. I do have some feelings for PT Cruisers now because of that, those 2 months that we spent at the Oakwood with it, sharing that car. We would go out to the car, listen to it. I always thought the hi-hat and Move Along was way too loud. And even though we turned it down a ton, it's still like the star of the chorus next to the lead vocal. But
it is, and I'm a big like picking things out of mixes that I think are annoying, and it doesn't bother this guy for whatever that's worth. I think it's the right mix.
Okay,
but
sweet.
Man, I know where you're at with that though, because I can get fixated on something in one of our songs, and the guys want to kill me.
Mm-hmm. And then it was a blast working with Chris. He did a remix of Swing Swing for us. When we went to radio with that one. He's always great to work with. He's a character. Because he worked so fast, he mixed the record in, I think, 10 business days. And we were, like I said, we were there at the end of every day at 5 o'clock to hear that last mix, and then he would split, and that was it. He'd do the next one the next day. But, just his one-liners, man. Like, a bunch of the Lenny Castro stuff on his third pass, his, like, miscellaneous pass. there'd be some like kooky percussion stuff, or maybe there was like a little noodly guitar, all the ear candy shit that we added.
Yeah.
He would go in to hear a mix, and I'm like, hey, where's the, insert kooky thing here? And he's like, oh, that thing? He's like, you wanted that? He's like, okay. He's like, okay, we'll pull it up. We'll just bury it on the passenger side. So pan it hard right, turn it down. We were happy. But yeah, back to your question. Sorry, I'd probably gotten quite long-winded on some of these.
No, it's great.
But yeah, I mean, we were set to go. Move Along was going to be the first single. It was going to be the name of the record. I mean, it is the name of the record. But, like I said, we didn't really have much waiting for us at home. We were in Florida, but the record was written. It was done. There's no reason for us to stay here. We accomplished what we came here to accomplish. Get us on the road. So literally just a week or two after the record was done, we got back in the van. We got to tour in a bus at the end of our first record cycle. But in the beginning of the second record cycle, almost 2 years later, it's like, if you want to go on tour without a record, and you're gonna have to tough it out in a van again. We're like, all right, cool, let's do it. Remember, 2 months, we call it the Van Whalen tour. 2 months, we got so fucking sick, all of us. It just went around the van. I remember I lost my voice. I wasn't singing backups on any of the shows.
No one's sleeping.
It was the worst. And then on top of that, we had to do like morning radio shit. So it got to the point where the tour manager was the only van driver. We used to take turns, but like after a show, if we got to, be at some morning show at 6 a.m. in Philadelphia or wherever the fuck, we got to sleep. And the guy that's been loading gear and running sound all day, I mean, let's face it, working harder than all of us, has to drive too. So that was.
We did the bus thing, and we went back to the van, and it lasted about 6 months, and it was like, oh, the bus is another level. You can actually get it as a singer. Rest is paramount to keeping your voice.
It's the most important thing. We even went back to the van and did our second Warped Tour in a van and not a bus like we did the first one.
No way.
In Florida, that'll break you.
Well, speaking of touring, and listen, I could talk to you all day, but we're gonna have to have you come back at some point.
I would love to. I do want to touch on the changing up the single though, because
yes, please do.
Yeah, so we were all set. We wanted to do we wanted the cover of the record to be not our picture. For one, the first single was going to be Move Along. We were going to, go on the road back in a van. It was really grassroots. But, I think, to their credit, Jimmy Iovine, by this time, we were finally at a label home of Interscope. Jimmy Iovine and Brenda, the radio person at Interscope, sometime during that van tour, we got a call from our A&R guy and said, Jimmy and Brenda, they want to switch up the single and go with Dirty Little Secret first. We were like, oh, fuck. And they want you to put your picture on the cover of the record. Like, oh, fuck. Everything is going to shit.
Well, you guys weren't the ugliest group of kids. I could see the merit in that. So.
I mean, we were 22, so we had that going for us. But, but we're like, okay. Well, okay, but make it silver ink and make it really faded so that you can only see our picture if you hold it at an angle, like a hologram. And then and then every pressing of the record like got progressively darker and darker. And now it looks like a Xerox now, but
I'm so glad that things worked out for you the way that they did. Picking that first setup single, leading into a record, there's been times that they got it wrong. And when it comes time around to pitch the correct single, the stations are over it. They're on to the next thing. So much of this is right time, right place.
Totally.
You have to have a great record. You have to have a great product, and it has to be great sounding, but right time and right place.
And God bless Interscope, because they stuck with... We wanted Move Along to be first because we were the most proud of that. Dirty Little Secret was kind of an afterthought for us. It wasn't even going to be on the record, but we did it. Whatever. Now, of course, it's great. People go nuts when we play it. I love that song.
Absolutely.
But thank God Interscope stuck with it, because it took like 6 months for that song to finally break. And I don't know if labels have that kind of patience or that kind of money to do that nowadays. And, thank God we got our second single. And then I think there ended up being like 5 singles or some shit on this record.
Yeah, it was like I said, that I think Dirty Little Secret in hindsight was the perfect setup.
I do too.
Great companion piece to Swing, but Move Along was just one of your standout tracks.
Thanks,
speaking
man.
of touring, you guys are going on the road soon with opening acts, Newfound Glory, The Starting Line, Motion City Soundtrack, and Get Up Kids.
Yeah, lots of Chris DeMakes a Podcast alumni there.
That and the fact that that's a pretty stacked lineup, buddy. That's gonna that's like a early 2000s concert dream lineup come true.
I mean, we haven't been on tour. We've been actively playing shows, except for COVID, of course, but like we've been actively playing shows for the last 10 years. But the last tour we did, I think, was 2017 with Dashboard. And then the last headlining tour we did was to support our last full-length album, Kids in the Street, which was in 2012. So we haven't done a headlining tour in 11 years. So I think, it felt like the right time. And I think we had an opportunity to take out a bunch of our friends and a bunch of bands that, we've crossed paths with, maybe toured with in the past, but haven't really just got to do like let's get all of our friends back together and just go have a fucking fun ass summer. And also it's like we haven't headlined in 11 years. So like, let's get a bunch of bands on this thing so we can, pack these rooms. But man, I'm so fucking stoked. I haven't been on a tour in a long time where I literally have thought, okay, don't book any press or meet and greets when the Get Up Kids play. Or, I need to watch all of these bands every night. I'm so fucking stoked.
That is such a great feeling. And I thought that those feelings as a kid were strong. You'd go out those first couple tours we all did. It's like, oh, we're going to see our friend's band play. You'd be watching every night. And now it's even a deeper appreciation because I can't believe I'm still doing this.
Right.
And and you're looking over at your buddy that you've known for 20 years and he's still doing it. And what a great feeling.
It's like that Paul Rudd meme. It's just like, look at us.
Yeah, no, it's a great feeling, and
totally.
And you and the guys, all the congratulations in the world to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sitting in, man. I really appreciate it,
dude. Thank you for all the time. I didn't mean to chew your ear off for an hour and a half, but
it was awesome, man. I love getting my ear chewed off, especially when someone is a good chewer. So.
Hey, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed that conversation with Nick Wheeler. What a guy. But don't go anywhere. We got the band you might not know coming up, as well as the wrap, where Chris and I will have our own little discussion about this episode. So we'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors.
Hi, podcast listeners. I'm Carol Costello, a former CNN anchor and national correspondent. This January, I'm launching a podcast about one of the first cases I ever covered as a journalist. It's one that stuck with me all of these years, the one that buried itself under my skin and stayed put. It's a true crime series about an amazing woman named Phyllis Cottle, who defied torture and death and brought a fierce rage to the quest to find her attacker. Carol Costello presents Blind Rage. It's a production of Evergreen Podcasts and signature title of the Killer Podcast Network. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Discover more great true crime and paranormal programming at killerpodcast.com.
Hey, everybody. If you like Chris DeMakes a Podcast, I'm going to assume that you like music podcasts. And if you like music podcasts, check out One Hit Thunder. Each week, we dive into a one-hit wonder, and along the way, we gain some knowledge and have some laughs. Lou Bega, Crazy Town, Harvey Danger, The New Radicals, Aha. We're over 100 episodes in now, and to paraphrase the great Matthew Wilder, nothing's going to break our stride. Subscribe to One Hit Thunder wherever you get your pods.
As we near the end of the show, here's a band you might not know.
Welcome to this week's Band You Might Not Know. If you'd like your band to be considered for Chris DeMakes a Podcast, all you have to do is email your best song via MP3 only and a short bio to bandyoumighttnotknow@gmail.com. This week's featured artist is Pedestrian, a punk rock band from Burlington, Ontario, Canada, consisting of TJ on bass, Drew on drums, Kyle on guitar, and Nick on vocals and guitar. Check them out on Instagram at pedestrian.music. Here's a snippet of their song, Middle Kid.
The Rap with Chris and Chris.
So, Chris, I thought that one was awesome. Obviously, Nick has listened to the show before, so he knew what he was getting into, which always makes the episode a lot more fun. For us, anyway.
Yeah, he hit you up, and I love that. I love he came in here all guns blazing. He was fired up. It was great.
Yeah, it was really fun watching this conversation happen, and he said a lot of things I took note of because I thought they were interesting. One of them being the old proven method of the A&R guy or the manager or the producer saying, you guys should keep writing, which will oftentimes piss off the band or get them pretty frustrated. But in this case, it really worked out for All American Rejects because they wrote this song after that was said to them. So for any producers or A&R guys or managers out there, hey, it doesn't hurt to say that, right?
No, not at all. Sometimes it's those trials and tribulations that, make a record what it is, and the band gets known for that. Had they had stopped writing before they got to move along, who knows what would have happened. Sometimes that gets the band fired up too. You get someone there telling you think you have a record in the can, and they're like, no, you don't. And sometimes anger breeds creativity. Yeah,
what's the worst thing that's going to happen? If you write a mediocre song in that time, you still it doesn't hurt anything. So I think that's a little bit of a trick that people might use,
Well, yeah, and we've heard conversely to that theory is Chad Gilbert from Newfound Glory when he was on talking about, they had a whole record written, and in the last minute they wrote was it My Friends Over You he came on to talk about?
Yeah, I think that was right, yeah.
I think that was what it was. But yeah, there's no pressure in that context because you're already sitting on an album. It's like, yeah, I'll write one more for the fun of it, and that becomes your signature song. So you never know what's going to happen. I've been on both sides of that fence, and as long as the record comes out how you envision it, then everyone's happy.
He also talked about how in those early years of the band, he's talking about the early 2000s, how frowned upon co-writing was. Now I think we're all more enlightened and probably open to collaborating with people, but at the time, man, that was a hard no. Even if Butch Walker was offered up as someone to co-write with, it's like, no, we're going to do our own thing. I know that we've in Punchline always felt that way. I'm sure Less Than Jake felt that way back in the day, but we all, now it just sounds cool. You could write with somebody, it sounds fun.
Yeah, as everybody listens to this show knows, I love collaborating because you can always learn something from somebody. I've learned stuff from 14, 15-year-old kids that pick up they've been playing the guitar for a week, and just the way that they'll play something or they'll have an idea the way they'd approach the guitar, you'll learn something. So I always try to keep my mind open to that. And Chris, I think today now more so than ever with social media's reach and whatnot, if you find the right person to collaborate with, if they have a big reach, you could get your band noticed to a new group of people that may not have been following you.
Sure. True. Hey, another thing that he talked about in this episode where I was like, oh my God, I do that I'm not kidding, Chris, probably 90% of every demo that I've ever made, falsetto doubling. I do that. I've just always done that because I think it sounds good with my voice. And maybe I've done it on a recording or two. I actually think I did it on a more recent Punchline song, but I didn't know that was something that was in vogue in recent years that a lot of artists do. I always thought, I did a lot of octave doubling in my personal vocals, but the falsetto thing, I didn't know that was such a thing.
Yeah, it's a big thing in the pop music world. And had I not worked with Howard or somebody that approached producing from a pop standpoint, I might have never known that either. But yeah, it was very strange when he asked me to do it, but I could see why. It's a part of your voice that fills out that other part of your voice. And for certain songs, it works masterfully. Is that a word? Masterfully?
Yeah, sure. Why not? I like that word. Another thing he talked about on here, which I thought was really interesting and funny, is he said, you don't grill your bandmates about what lyrics are about. And, any lyrics I've contributed, no one's in my band is grilling me on them. I don't grill my bandmates about theirs because sometimes you're writing about something personal and you don't necessarily want to get into it. It might make you a little squeamish. It might make you a little bit embarrassed for one reason or another. Maybe you're talking about your feelings or your emotions or something. So, you know, your homies in your band might just be like, no, that sounds cool. The melody's cool. The performance is great. And they're not grilling you on it. But so I thought it was pretty interesting that he brought that up in reference to, you know, in this song, he said Tyson had written the verses. And I also thought it was interesting. And a lot of times the people that come on our show say things that I feel like I'm never going to forget. But he said the verse is for the artist and the chorus is for everybody else. And I was like, that is so true, because a lot of times you could write whatever in the verse, but as long as the chorus is relatable to people on a grand scale, the song could be a hit.
Absolutely. Got to remember that chorus hook. And I'll tell you something else you got to remember, Chris.
What's that?
If you're not already part of our supporting cast, go over to ChrisDeMakes.com and be a member for the price of a Cracker Barrel apple juice, $3.89 national average. You could support the podcast you know and love and get extra episodes each week of the After Party, where Chris and I lament on everything from this week's episode to world affairs and everything in between. It's a lot of fun. ChrisDeMakes.com. Help us out.
It's a whole other podcast we do that we've done. At this point, when you're listening to this, well over 100 episodes of that. It's called The After Party. It's at ChrisDeMakes.com. And yes, for the price of an apple juice at the Cracker Barrel, which I think should always be our be our pitch to people. You can go to ChrisDeMakes.com. You support the podcast. You get a bonus episode every week, and it's just for pocket change. And you really help us out, and you allow us to continue making this podcast forever, bringing you great guests each week where you learn, you're entertained, and, you know, we all have a little fun.
There you go. And I got a call this morning from my friend Bobby down in the Tampa Bay area, Chris. He said he heard my jingle for Just Call Mo. It's a lawyer down there. Yes, I can get in bed with lawyers if I have to. Wrote him a jingle. It's getting played on 102.5 The Bone in Tampa. So I'm on the radio down there. If you want to jingle The Bone, if you want classic rock, Chris, which means our bands are now, we might get played in The Bone. If you want a custom song or jingle for your business, if you're a struggling lawyer in the Central Florida or Tampa Bay area, give me an email, ChrisDeMakes@gmail.com. I'd love to write you or that special someone a custom song or a jingle for your business. It'd be fantastic. And this has been an awesome episode. I love Move Along, great song, and even a greater person, Mr. Nick Wheeler. Thanks for sitting in with us, and we'll see you next time.
Hey everybody, Satan here. I know what you're thinking. Jesus Christ, Satan has a podcast now too? No, that's not it. But I am here to tell you about a podcast, and it's one that's all about my favorite band, Punchline. Not the band you expected me to say, right? You probably figured I'd like Slayer, or maybe some backwards Beatles records or something. Those are okay. But you usually find me rocking out to fan-favorite Punchline albums like Action or Lion while I'm torturing dead people for all of eternity. Punchline's podcast is called A Band Called Punchline, and it's super entertaining to listen to this documentary-style look back at the 25 years of my favorite band. Honestly, I'm really feeling like I'm getting to know these guys, and their story is amazing. I'm so ready for them to get down here. I have so many questions. I gotta give them credit for catching on to my whole 37 thing, too. There's a reason why they're my favorite band, and if you listen to their podcast, they might become yours, too. A Band Called Punchline is available wherever you listen to podcasts. Check it out, and I'll see you all in hell.
Each week on the One Hit Thunder podcast, we welcome a special guest to come take a deep dive into a one-hit wonder artist with us. And together, we decide if that artist brought the one-hit thunder or was nothing more than a one-hit blunder. You can find One Hit Thunder anywhere that you listen to podcasts, so hit that subscribe button and join in on the fun each week.
What's up, everybody? I am Finn McKenty, host of the Punk Rock MBA podcast, part of the Sound Talent Media podcast network. My podcast is all about doing what you love for a living, and every week I sit down and talk to people who have done exactly that. For example, musicians like Tommy from Between the Buried and Me, Matt from Periphery, Lil Lotus and Shinigami, among many others, photographers, artists, designers, YouTubers like Glenn Fricker and Sarah Dici, and I unpack exactly how they got to where they are today with the goal of helping you do the same. So if that sounds cool, you can listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com, and I'll see you there.